My name is Bruce Allen.
My name is Hannibal Shabazz.
I'm Philip Dunn.
My name is Ron Marcus.
My name's Michael Blair.
And, I'm a Rotarian with the Castle Hill Rotary Club. I think the most people join Rotary or are interested in Rotary as it's a vehicle of giving back.
I always have believed in my heart that you can't just take and take and take from whatever situation you're in. You must give back some to the community that you're living in, one way or another.
Mainly it's all about the way we interact with the community, both our community and internationally, to ensure that we're doing all we can to help people to a better way of life.
It's quite an old service club which aims to make life a little bit better for somebody, for us. There is, for the want of a better term, a reasonable amount of Rotary bullshit.
I was born and brought up in northwest of Iran. I immigrated with my then family to Sydney in 1971. I've been a Rotarian since 1988, and that was the best thing I ever did for myself in my life. I was working with an air conditioning company in Gladesville in early 70s through to 1980. The company secretary, his name was a guy by the name of Jack Holmes. He was a past president of Rotary Club of Hunters Hill, and he said to me many times that he thought I would be a good Rotarian if I ever joined. And quite a few times he took me with him to the Rotary meetings at Hunters Hill, and I really felt at home. I liked it. After a while I was trying to see if chance provided I was going to join. And in 1988 I joined Castle Hill Rotary Club because at that time I was living in Castle Hill. After you realize that they're really all there to help, to get together and find ways of making some money to spend on somebody that really needs it, was very honorable job to do. So I was interested from first time I went there.
The contact was made through one of the people I was doing electrical work for, who was a member of the Rotary Club of Castle Hill. Now, in those days, I was interviewed by a panel of 3 people to see that I was suitable. I was asked to join. It wasn't a question of me wanting to join. Well, when I joined Rotary, the bulk of the members were hands-on people. They were tradespeople and I was asked to join particularly because I was an electrician. I'm unable to recall what the first meeting was like. I was probably fairly nervous because, but I did know a number of the people before he went there.
I'm Jenny Dunn. I'm not a Rotarian myself. On the other hand, I have been involved in a lot of the projects that have happened and have a lot of happy memories and have learned a lot, I think, about the organisation during that time. I think always working with people brings you closer, or at least gets you to understand what makes them tick.
Growing up in the region, I was brought up in Merrylands, although I was born in North Parramatta, not a kilometre away from where we're sitting now. So my formative years, all my years really, were spent in Merrylands, and then we moved on from there. When I was introduced, it was Blackwood in the hills in Adelaide. We had a president who was a jovial sort of fellow and a good sort of guy, and he welcomed me warmly, and I was introduced to the members as a guest and a new resident, a new part of the community, and yeah, I enjoyed that meeting. It was pretty laid back. Well, I mean, I joined in 86 and the club started in 65, so and in those days they were young people, that was new. They were enthusiastic, not that they aren't now, but it was hands-on stuff.
Well, I've known about it for a long time. The gentleman that I used to do work professionally with as an engineer, he thought I was a Rotarian, and surprise, surprise, I wasn't. So he got me into it, invited me up to the Castle Hill Club, and that was in '94. I found them to be a very hospitable group of gentlemen. There was no ladies in there at that time, and they made me feel welcome. It wasn't a dark horse that come out from nowhere. I think I can offer something to the community. I think that's basically the reason why I joined it. I joined it also for fellowship and friendship, because they're not a bad bunch of people.
Well, my first contact with Rotary is I had a friend who was the president of a Rotary Club in North Parramatta, and he approached me to see whether I was interested in helping him out on a volunteer project that they were doing in a remote area of Papua New Guinea. At the time, I was an electrician, and they needed somebody with electrical knowledge to help them out on the project. So I agreed to go, and we went up to a place called Koroba, which was in the Southern Highlands, very close to the then Irian Jaya border with Indonesia. And we were up there for 3 weeks building the first stages of a clinic on site for the people who had only had contact with the outside world for less than 15 years. It was quite an experience for a person like myself who'd never been out of Australia and suddenly into the very remote areas of Papua New Guinea. It was an incredible experience. And I thought, well, if Rotary does this to help other people like this is something that I would like to be involved in. I've been guest speaker at the club, and I knew quite a few people at the time. I was president of the Baulkham Hills High School, and quite a few of the Rotary members at the time had children going to the high school and were part of the P&C. So a couple of times actually helped them on the showgate when they were a bit short of staff, even as a non-Rotarian. It was quite a challenge at the time. The dog people at the time were very difficult. They seemed to know our ancestry better than we did. And the horse people at times could be a little bit temperamental, but it all worked out, and it was quite pleasant. A very, very good social event to be on there with members of the Rotary Club. And I was president of the Rotary Club in 88, 89, and at that time we had 70 members. It was quite a large club, and I don't know, it was every position, particularly, going for the different avenues of service, were all contested.
I was president in 91, 92 at Castle Hill, and we did all the things we did, and it was very community focused. But when I retired from Goodyear, the governor at the time said, well, you've now got time to come and work at the district level. And I went in and did some jobs at district level. And that's when you start to see the scope and the scale of Rotary in the world. And that's when I started to get more interested in international projects, although still retaining a great interest in what we do in our community. So that was an interesting one. The other one was being district governor. That's probably the best year of my life.
I was the president of Castle Rotary Club 95-96, and in my year we started a particular program called bike ride within Castle Hill. That started from the first ever time we ran it in my year in 96, early 96. We made a hell of a lot of money. That money is used, every single penny of it is used to help somebody somewhere. Obviously, predominantly help was provided to very, very poor people. It doesn't matter where, but we also have always said charity starts at home. So if there was anybody that in need that was much closer, we would start with them.
The club sort of put you on a little bit of a pedestal as president. I suppose I enjoyed the role. It sort of was a role of having to run the meeting on a weekly basis, also be available for fellowship events, etc. I did club service, I think I mentioned that. I was treasurer in about 2016. Of late, I have been responsible for running Bunnings barbecues.
As a president, it can be very taxing on you. There's a lot to do, a lot of meetings to go to, not just your club meetings, but district meetings and what have you. And that keeps you on your toes, as well as trying to control a whole heap of bandits. That was an enjoyable experience as a president. As a director, I was director for quite a number of years, mainly in community service, which was involving outside projects and stuff like that. And that I held, that position was probably about 15 years, I suppose, I held that position. As a councillor, didn't realise what I put myself up for, but anyway, I did. And I served 8.5 years as a councillor, the last 2.5 as a deputy mayor. But it was a fairly non-thankful, taxing role. Yeah, that was an interesting period of my life.
I picked up a project that was called Rota Homes in Fiji. This was providing homes for extremely poor families, mostly Indian families, living in Fiji city outskirts in atrocious conditions. So I got involved with that. Every year I used to go to the budget night and with my begging bowl I used to hustle and give them hard time to get $3,600 allocated for one of these houses. We used to buy all the material was supplied from predominantly from New Zealand to the site. This was in Lautoka, a second largest city in Fiji, and central tableland Rotarians, mostly farmers and people like that, used to go to Fiji once every 6 months and put these materials together and build dwellings. They were not houses, just one of the better words is fixed caravan, something like that. And I was so proud to do this for many, many years. And on a holiday coming back from overseas, the ship stopped. My wife and I were on the ship, stopped at Latoka. So everybody went, all the other passengers went here, there, everywhere, enjoying themselves on the beaches. I said to my wife, we're going to go and see what's happened to these houses that I've been involved in this dwelling. So we went, and I had a guy that it was my liaison there from Rotary Club of Latoka, a guy called Peter Drysdale. And he looked after us all that day, took us for a drive around the joint, and it showed us about 20 days prior to that, there had been a major flooding. And most of or these caravan things that people were living in had been washed away, unfortunately. There was one or two left, which I have taken a video of. And if you see how these people lived in these things, I was so shocked, so out of my depth, I start crying, to be honest with you. I just couldn't believe that a human being can live in these conditions, in these situations. So I came back with, again, I never stopped until later on in the early 90s, I think, New Zealand government took on the program themselves. They donated $1.5 million to Rota Homes, and then we stopped being involved in that particular project.
I had about 13 odd projects that I looked after in Papua New Guinea, and then in I suppose 1990 I was advisor in international service, and I was approached by a doctor from North Bridge Club, Dr. Alan Gale, who asked me to come to Nepal because they needed somebody, a technical advisor, on the equipment that they were having to install up there, but they were very worried about the operating theatre. They were going up there to train in open heart surgery, and of course they'd had a doctor. They brought a doctor down and had him trained in Australia, and then they were going up there to have open heart surgery. So he asked me if I would come up with them, which I agreed to, and we went up there. It was quite a very interesting thing, in a very large hospital, which was very backward, and it's a multi-storey building. But when I investigated further on that and saw the incredible state of their electrical system and how dangerous it was, that I decided to do something about that. And being in Prospect County Council at the time, I approached some of the guys from there to see, took photos, and to see if we could do something about their substation and their 11,000 volt system. We agreed we could do it, so we went up and did a total survey on it. Rotary Foundation agreed to pay for all the electrical equipment that we needed. It was a massive job, but we had to do the project live, virtually live. We had to transfer all the circuits over onto a temporary bus bar on the back wall, because there was a room half the size of here that with all the switchgear in it, and it had to be pulled out and rebuilt. The first cat labs that we put in were the first in the country. When you looked at Nepal at the time, that had 26 million people and no cat lab. And so we put the first one into Nepal. The same thing happened in Mongolia. We gave them the first cat lab, the country's first cat lab. Otherwise, they used to have to send people to Russia or somewhere overseas. In Nepal, they had to go, to India or somewhere out of the country. I remember Kathmandu said it's ridiculous. We need something, but we can't accomplish. We can't afford it. We managed to give them one.
I think probably the one that stands out is, you may remember the Ningan floods. It was because of the floods, they evacuated the whole town, and so people were left with what they had on, and it was Anzac Day, and I was sitting out the front reading the Herald, and I said to Jenny, somebody ought to do something about that. So I rang the community service director, and he said, yeah, go ahead. So I rang what then was 702 ABC radio, and I rang Margaret Throsby, who was running the morning program, and she agreed to put a request out for clothing. We rallied the members around, and by 5 o'clock that afternoon, we had a truckload of clothing on its way to Dubbo. One of our members had a truck, and we paid for the fuel. The club paid for the fuel, but he drove to Dubbo, and it went to a Robbo's tyre service at Dubbo, and they distributed they belonged to Dubbo Club South. And that collection of clothing went on for a week. After that, it got taken out of my hands by a lady called May Todd, who was the wife of a Rotarian, Neil Todd, who was very adept at organising people. It was a very interesting week. We finished off, we sold the clothing that was unsuitable to the rag and bag merchants and brought in a bit of extra dollars that way, and there was also money involved. But the other side issue of that one, we embarrassed the state government. They decided they had to put out an appeal. They put out an appeal for collection of clothing and goods and so forth at what was the old Sydney Showground. And in the end, they got things that were unsuitable, mattresses in particular, which they had to then dump.
Mainly two projects come to mind, which was an annual project we did call the Tour d'Île. It was a bicycle ride. And I organised that for 20 years. And we raised over that period of time, I think, in excess of $2 million. And that was distributed to various charities and what have you. That was one. And then the other one, we then started a running event called the Run to the Hills. And it's gradually building itself up. We're starting in our 7th year. It's just a day out for families, really, to run around the park. And at the same time, we can get some money out of them.
Firstly, the tsunami was the first big operation I got involved in overseas, and we collected something like $350,000. The clubs in our district collected $350,000, and we then had to work out how we could spend it effectively. So I got in touch with all the governors in those areas that were most affected and said, how can we help? And a couple responded, some didn't, but 3 from India responded. And I said, well, give me your ideas, and they gave me ideas, and I said, we'll go and check them. So we'd agreed this as a committee that we'd go over and check exactly what they were doing. So I went to India, someone else had Indonesia, and just had a look at the sort of things they wanted to do. And it didn't always work out, so we're back to the drawing board, but we eventually got there, and we did an enormous amount of good that was righting the wrongs that were brought to these people through a dreadful event like the tsunami. And the coast of India and Sri Lanka was just decimated. It was just incredibly ravaged. And to walk through those villages, to see the state people were living in, was just heart-wrenching. No doubt about it. So that drives you a little bit harder to do things better. And I've been back to India maybe 6 or 7 times on various projects. And this is something we fund ourselves. We don't get paid for it, and we get no expenses. I stay with Rotarians over there, or they'll put me into a hotel, but they always pick up the bill. But they're working very hard for their community as well. But things like schools we restored, low-cost housing we built, water wells we re-sunk, beetle farms re-established, because the leaves of the beetle tree are very, they eat the nuts, which discolours their teeth somewhat. But the leaves are very important from a ceremonial point of view when entering a house. And yeah, the water projects were important. Well, it's just countless the sort of things we did that just all added value to the people's lives, and it was just super to see. You don't really get a good impression of it unless you go there and get the, I like to say, the dust of the village on your shoes. I think the biggest change and most beneficial change was the introduction of women into Rotary.
As president, I also had the honor of inducting the first ever lady into our club against the will of few of the older members of the club at the time.
I know a lot at the time, a lot of the men in the club didn't want women to be admitted, but I think on the whole it's been a good thing. I mean, society is made up of both sexes, and to have a men-only thing, I think really was a bit ridiculous.
If there weren't women in the club, particularly in, I would say in Castle Hill, if there hadn't been women in the club, Castle Hill would have folded.
50% of our community made up of ladies, females, and how can we possibly respond to the needs of those people without a similar amount of women in our clubs?
We have quite a number of lady Rotarians now, and I think they've been a godsend to us.
Well, yeah, women do have a brain, and they have a lot to contribute. It's changed, it softens the club. There's no longer the blokey attitude of a lot of alcohol. And
it's sort of emphasised something I've always think: women are really good thinkers. They're not just there to do domestic and home duties. They are good thinkers, keen thinkers, and good workers. Just so aggressive in their approach to make sure that things are done right, and things are done.
So nowadays, this particular year now, the international RI president is a lady. Our immediate district governor is lady, and our president at my club is lady. So I'm so proud to see the ladies that are taken over, more or less.
I got 3 priorities. I always had 3 priorities. It's family, work and Rotary. I sometimes got 1 and 2 mixed up a bit because that's the nature of the beast, but Rotary always remained number 3. apart from when I was governor, that was a full-on year, and my wife was so supportive of me. She came to every meeting with me. She was enormously supportive, as were the kids. They were adult by then and off on their own, but they grew up with Rotary, and I've lost track of the times when we were driving and one of them would say, "Oh, Dad, there's a Rotary sign, there's a Rotary Park," or whatever. So they grew up. They're not Rotarians and don't want to be, but they're good kids, and they do their things in the way they do their things. But they were very supportive of me, and the kids still are. My wife passed away about 11 years ago now, but the kids are still very supportive of what I do and are with me every step of the way.
Growing up, I was in orphanages, and in those days they were very highly disciplined places, but it still taught me well, and I think that's where my moral values come in. I think they say, if you want something done, ask a busy person, and I think that was the way with me. I couldn't say no.
Sometimes we sit here watching some little bit of television, and I cry sometimes. I see something on the television, and Jenny said she can't believe it, that a man, an 84 years old man, sits down, and if a dog is run over or whatever, cries. I think it's gotta be in you. If I go to the men's bathrooms in anywhere, people just dry their hands and put it there in 3-4 people, and the pocket is full. I clean my hand, push the whole lot down to the bottom. 9 times out of 10, it's not my business. I don't get paid for that, but that's how I am. You could call me dumb or whatever. That's your business. I approach people, ask them, why don't they join Rotary? They say, I've got children, I've got running around. I said, mate, if you were just sitting down watching television and wasting your life, I wouldn't ask you. I only ask hard-working people, because you find time, you make it your business. If your heart is in it, you find time to do all good things.
Let's face it, without Judy's support, I could never have achieved what I have achieved. There's no doubt about that. No, we've been married for just on 70 years, and she's been an absolute blessing. And there's no way on earth I could have accomplished what I've accomplished without her total utter support.
I do believe that we need to help each other. We're not just a single entity. We are part of a family, and if somebody's down their luck, if we can help them, so be it.
I think it means a lot to you, because you've invested a lot of time and energy into it, and the return
And money.
and money, yes, and the return has been friendship and a feeling of you're doing things for a worthwhile cause.
In 1986, one of our daughters had a very bad car accident and was severely injured, and during that period of time, the Rotary Club supported us and visited us, and when we had her home here and we were doing rehabilitation work with her, a number of the wives would come out, and it was wives, they would come out, talk to her, provide certain exercises with it to help her get back a little bit of strength. And she died last December 22, and the members that supported it after that, was quite gratifying to know that they not only came to the church service but generally supported it. And I suspect that's one of the things that made us stay.
I think the other practical support at that time was it was decided that an indoor swimming pool would be helpful for her rehabilitation, which involved building a shed with an in-ground pool in it. And a number of the Rotary Club members were very hands-on, helpful in actually coming and putting together a prefabricated shed for that. And it gave us the chance to get to know some of them really well, because when you work with people, you get to know what they're really made of, I think. And that's something that we have never forgotten and have been very grateful for.
I also was involved in a big time with a program that started from nothing here in the Hills District. One particular day, 4 young people, boys, 18, 19, 20s, one of them borrowed mom's car and had an accident not far away from Jerry Harvey's home on the old Norton Road there. And all 4 of them were killed, unfortunately. So that night we had a meeting. I couldn't eat my dinner. I was devastated. I was really hurt. I got up and said, listen, we beg, borrow, steal, do all sorts of things, get money together, and we spend it all over the world. While these things are happening next door to us and we lose young people like this is crazy. We must do something about this. Unbeknown of me, there was quite a few other clubs started at the same time after this horrible accident. And we put a program together. You Hold the Wheel, it was called. And with that, we used to go to colleges and high schools in the neighborhood, which is now all over Australia. We picked up year 11 students, boys and girls, took them to, originally we used to take them to police training school at St. Ives. And there were 8 hours tuition. They used to show them how to drive to stay alive. And they showed them everything about owning and looking after a vehicle and stuff. And I was originally involved with that for many years until we got it going.
We did some work on a person's timber deck out the back, because it's all rotted and what have you, and they didn't have the wherewithal of replacing it, and they had a son who had a rare form of muscular dystrophy, and so we decided we'll put our working gear on and get out there and do it, and built this deck for them. Things like that. We're continually doing small stuff like that. Yeah.
One of the things that was exceptionally pleasing to me was what we call a group study exchange program, where 4 or 5 young business people are selected, non-Rotarians are selected through the interview process to go to another country in the company of a Rotarian leader to experience their vocation in another marketplace. And that's enormously valuable to those young people. I was selected as the leader for one of those tours, and we went to the Netherlands, and a team from the Netherlands come out here, and we of course act as hosts when they come out here. But that was a pretty enlightening experience, I thought.
Perhaps the other one that was outstanding in my mind was the Wiggles concert was held at Castle Hill Showground. it fell to me as community service director at the time to do the parking. That was our role. It was $5 a car, parking at the showground. The final total amount that we extracted, I suppose, was $29,000.
And there were queues of cars that blocked every street within, I don't know how many
Well,
days of the
we were
showground.
visited by the police and by the council. What are you going to do about this? Because the line of cars stretched back round the showground road. There were women, and mostly women, who were anxious to get their kids into Wiggles, and I wasn't actually on the parking physically, but some of the other members were, and they said they had heard expletives that they'd never heard before by some of the ladies who were bringing their kids to these Wiggle concerts. You will never get between a woman and who's driving a four-wheel drive and a parking space. I don't know what the future of Rotary is. At the moment, I'm a little disappointed in the participation of some of the new members. We run these Bunnings barbecue in which we require about 12 people over the day, 6 people in the morning, 6 people in the afternoon, and sometimes we're battling to get 6 people. I don't know whether it will survive. I'm sort of ambivalent about that. I don't know. I'm at the moment, because I've closing the end of my career in it, I go with the flow a bit. I like the way some of the ladies are picking up the baton and running with it.
I think the main thing is for Rotary to continue. I think it's critical that our club in particular is doing a good job of reinvigorating itself with younger people of different ethnic and age groups, and that's good. I think we've got to reflect our community. Our club has to reflect the community. We've got people with energy and ideas and excitement and attitude, and it's so good. And I think we've just got to keep that going. We've got to keep regenerating, because there's probably 10 guys in our club that won't be around in 5 years, and I'm one of them. So we need to replace those with the sort of people we were when we joined. It's a different Rotary now than it was then, but it needs to be different because the people joining are different. They're not the same sort of people that joined when I joined or when the club was formed. Now they're different people, so Rotary needs to be different. I think Paul Harris, who started Rotary in 1948, I think he said we live in a changing world, and if Rotary must be prepared to change with it, and he was absolutely right.
If you don't mind, I want to mention one person in particular. That's Jamie. Jamie, our new Rotarian, he's not very young, but he's not my age either. So I think he's in his early 40s. People like him make me so optimistic of future of Rotary, because he's capable person, and he's not the only one, by the way, please, being fair to the rest of the young people. Many of them are fortunately ladies, to my liking. That is because they were pushed away for a long enough time. And I'm sure Rotary will keep on going because it's got honorable policies, and it builds in you a feeling of, if you care, you get something out of it. You get plenty out of when you give.
It'll take time to be a Rotarian. No one's a Rotarian. I mean, they're members of the Rotary Club, but you don't become a Rotarian until it hits the heart, and that feeling of wanting and needing to help people is firmly entrenched. It's very hard to do it as an individual. So joining a group such as Rotary or many other groups around that help the community, that's the first point. And then come up with ideas. I mean, too many Rotarians join our club and are afraid to come up with ideas. I would ask anyone joining a club, think what you can do and how you can do it. Don't just come along and be a Rotarian.
The younger generation are too ready to back off. They're not going to make that step forward and get themselves involved. And we see that with our Rotaract clubs. They're very small in number, and it's hard for them to get membership. But I think that's the first and foremost, is not to be scared, not to be frightened. We're not bogeymen or anything like that. You know, we want you, as I say.